Hello, everyone. Namaste and very good morning from Kathmandu. So we'd like to welcome you all to our international webinar. ACECC Future Leaders has been conducting this webinar for long. So with your permission, I would like to now start for today's webinar. So before we proceed with the webinar, we'd like to give short glimpse on who we are and how we are doing this kind of events. So hello and namaste once again. This is Suraj from ACECC Future Leaders Committee. ACECC is the Asian Civil Engineering Coordinating Council, consisting of 17 member economies that includes Australia, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, USA, Vietnam, Russia, and New Zealand. So the major objective of this Future Leaders Group is to develop the leadership skills in young civil engineers by creating a sustainable forum, promoting diverse and inclusive culture, and also creating avenues for the professional development. So that is the major agenda that has been tying us, and we do these kind of events on a very regular basis. So as a future leaders, this is the Future Leaders Committee that you will be working for 2 years, and we will be we have 6 members and 1 immediate past year who is coordinating with us. And this is the strategic plan. As I already discussed, we work in the 3 objectives, and there are a number of events that we have been designing and we have been implementing. So talking about the how ACECC works, so we have 4 working groups, and under the working groups, we conduct a number of activities that includes the conduction of webinars, development and publishing of the newsletters, developing some research and documentation works, and also publishing all those things via our website. And besides that, we also have the working groups, how the countries coordinate and conduct the thematic webinars. So this is the webinar working group 1, that is Australia, Japan, Nepal, and Myanmar. And we are organizing this today's webinar. So it's a thematic webinar, and we can also access the resources of our future leaders from our website. And we also have been publishing the newsletter, as you can see in the screen. So the couple of versions of newsletter has also already been published. And in case if you want to submit your articles, or maybe if you have something interest to share with us, then you could also do that. So you can simply follow our website, or also you can get with us. So this is how we publish our newsletters. And besides, I already mentioned we have been organizing various webinars regarding very important topics in civil engineering. That includes the different building materials, then earthquakes, and also some learnings from different major disasters and so on. So with regards to that, today we are having an international webinar, and the topic is related to community engagement for the resilient infrastructure. And we have 2 distinguished guests. So it will be Mr. Anup, who is a future leader, who's a young engineer who has been working and solving a lot, especially after the Gorkha earthquake 2015, and he has been doing some excellent works, which he'll be sharing during his presentation. Whereas we also have Leisa Prowse, with very good experiences in the community engagement for the resilient infrastructure. And I believe the blending of experiences from the young and the experienced speakers will definitely help us groom together. And I guess it will be really interesting to hear from them. So I would like to request you all to tune in to us for a coming hour, and then we'll be having presentation from both speakers, and then it will be followed by a Q&A session, and then we'll be ending our today's webinar. So before we move on to our webinar, may I request Salindra sir to quickly summarize on how we are going ahead and how do we expect participation from the young future leaders. Over to you, Salindra sir.
Thank you very much, Suraj. I probably have already welcomed Leisa and Anup, but thank you very much to Leisa and Anup for their time today and for their presentations. Look forward to that. I think it's great for ACECC to have this Future Leaders Group. As I mentioned, there's 17 member economies, we call it, and each one has a male and a female rep. and they I think they came into play probably only a few years ago because the group didn't exist in the past. But it's great to see the involvement in technical committees, in seminars whenever the ACECC meets, and ACECC usually meets in the first quarter of each year and the last quarter of each year. So we recently met in Taiwan, where Maria and Suraj were present and participated in seminars. We are meeting in March next year, or last day of February and March, first few days of March in Philippines. And Maria will be the Future Leaders host. I suppose she is from Philippines, and Maria is the secretary for the Future Leaders group. Yeah, and as I said earlier, Makbul Mohammed, who's based in New York, is the deputy chair for the two of us. I suppose we are providing guidance to Suraj and his team, and they've been doing an excellent job, as you can see from the presentation from Suraj. So back to you, Suraj, and thank you very much for Anup and Leisa.
Thank you so much, Salindra sir. As Salindra sir has already stated, the Future Leader Forum, we have guidances from our FLF chair, Salindra Ram, and also from our deputy chair, Makbul Mohammed. So we are really thankful to them. So now, without any further delay, we would like to now move on to our first presentation for today. And it will be presented by Mr. Anup Poudel. Mr. Anup Poudel is a professional working in the sector of DRR and infrastructure sector with more than 7 years of experiences. So he has been serving in different municipalities in the building code implementation sections and also in devising plans and procedures for the municipalities. He has also led several training programs for numerous stakeholders in safer building construction. He has also involved in building code compliance and building inventory design survey, along with the data management and extraction of analytical and statistical results. So he has extensive knowledge on earthquake resistant buildings and is experienced in site management of retrofitted building construction. So without any further delay, I would like to now hand over this stage to Mr. Anup. So over to you, Anup.
Thank you, Suraj. Hopefully I'm visible and my slide is also visible to all of you.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Hello and good morning. Namaste to everyone. Today I'll be presenting on community engagement for resilient infrastructure. Firstly, I had actually prepared presentation for a little longer, but I'll try to succinct it to 15 minutes. Introducing myself, I have completed my bachelor's degree and master's in structural engineering, both from Poudel campus. And with respect to resilient infrastructure and urban resilience, I have been involved in 3 major programs. I've been involved as program coordinator in technical support for resilient community that was involved in 7 local levels in around Nepal. I will gather some experiences from there as well. I have been working now as a DRR expert in risk governance and community resilient division at NSAID Nepal, National Society for Earthquake Technology Nepal. I have been working as a DRR expert, and previously I also worked as a data analyst in study of urban development in Kathmandu Valley. That was a JICA project as well. Without further ado, I would like to continue my presentations. What actually means by the infrastructures? Infrastructures range from a lot of diverse factors as well. It includes transportation infrastructures, that includes roads, highways, utilities, that includes water supply, electric powers, public facilities, and it also leads to includes housing and residentials, and also that includes residential buildings, housing developments. These are all forms of infrastructures. And some of the infrastructure development works that I have been involved in, I have included some of the images as well. This is the road construction work, school construction work. This was a public assembly all as well. Similarly, drinking water sedimentation tanks, bridge, and electric power plants are some of the examples of infrastructure development work. But coming towards the infrastructures, we tend to forget the term associated with it, that is a resilient infrastructures. What we actually describe resilient infrastructure is its ability to withstand the crisis as well, and withstand and encompasses a number of factors that actually tries to help it disrupt. So resilient infrastructure can be described in 4 major terms: continuity, recovery, adaptability, and sustainability. I've included 4 major terms here, but what we are actually missing is these are all community centered. We have built all the infrastructures. These are built with the needs and inputs of the locals. If we do not address the needs of the locals, we do not address the inputs from the locals, I don't think there is any need or any possibility of any usefulness of those infrastructure as well. So with all these 5 elements, then we can only describe anything as a resilient infrastructure. And this resilient infrastructure ultimately leads to urban resilience. And during my stint as well, I have been able to involve in policy making for resilient local communities as well. These are some of the informations that I have included is from National Strategy for Resilient Local Communities developed in Government of Nepal. And the concept of urban resilience is for the planned development of urban rural areas with agile administrative regulatory arrangements and developing physical structure service facilities so that they can adjust to the disaster and they can help mitigate the people's needs as well. And where we'll try to combine these methods and process with its dimensions of local development. The indicators, this strategy has assumed that the need to make a strategy and action plan for the local level using the following formula has been stated as well. It includes a systematic capacity of community and stakeholder capacity, and institutional management and regulatory capacity minus risk proximity. And in the formula itself, you can see a number of community terms associated with it as well. So it clearly indicates that in urban resilience or resilient infrastructure works, the involvement of community is extremely essential. We have already seen in the practical aspects as well, and it is also provided from the national strategy, the strategy developed by government as well. It has also incorporated the need of communities involvement, the capacity of community in urban resilience sector as well. And this strategy was developed with a vision of uplifting communities through the construction of physical infrastructures, economic and social development, and continuous enhancement as well. And it helps the current scenario is by it is done by reducing the disaster risk proximity of the overall physical, economic, and social development activities as well, which will lead and which we will adopt in the path of resilience. And these are some of the directive principles that has been taken so as to develop resilient local communities. It includes phase-wise progression, action plan on an unified resilience, and it includes participatory approach. It includes the participation from the local communities, and a periodic revision has been adopted as well. And this is these are all the documents. These are all the points that I have taken from the National Strategy for Resilient Local Communities that was developed in 2017. Why is the need of community engagement is we need community engagement because people have different interpretations. There are incomplete informations, lack of understanding. So we need to disseminate the ideas of the infrastructure or disseminate the idea of urban resilience to the community so that we have a unified interpretation as well. The second is addressing the people have their own opinions, they have their own principles. There is cultural values within each communities as well. So these policies, through these policies, we will try to address different opinions that are in the communities. There are different personal motives as well in the communities. Some have their own goals, they have their own motives. So we'll try to share the goals of a whole project rather than benefiting some individuals as well. That is extremely important in this community engagement as well. The fourth is code of conducts. There can be unacceptable behaviors, there can be disputes, unhuman practices as well. So we will address those through the code of conducts as well. So it is the need of community. So it is the community engagement is required. What I have indicated a picture as well. The perception of communities can be different for the same thing. The two peoples are seeing a same figure, but from one's eye it is a 9, while from the other eyes it is a 6. And if you look at it, neither of them are incorrect, both of them are correct. But it is not our goal to create this kind of chaos among the communities, and it is not possible for any infrastructure work or urban resilience work to go forward without addressing these communities, without addressing these perceptions of communities as well. So what we need is we identify the problems. As you can see, people there, 2 donkeys are trying to eat the food, and they are just seeing what is in forward of them. They are hungry and they are fighting with each other to get some food. So we need to identify the problem. We need to be positive. We need not to be person centric, but centered on solving those problems. We need to look at options. They are come together. They are looking for options and selecting the best options so that it will be win-win for both parties. These 2 donkeys have just collaborated with each other, and they have just eat both the food as well. And in this community engagement role as well, it can be necessary to include third-party assistance if required. And also important is involving these community members in decision making and ownership process. I don't think if these donkeys were instructed by some others, then they would have come to the conclusion. It is among the discussions among themselves as well, they were able to solve these problems. So we have to, in this journey, we have to raise issues on it. We have to discover interests among people. We have to generate options. And with options, we need to develop agreements. And after these agreements only, we can have a positive community engagement as well. Another is we have to manage emotions. And in this journey, we have to, there should be an effective communications among all those stakeholders included within this work. And we have to respect its perception as well. And the main value is, if you are working with community, we need to instill the values that I am because we are. Because if it's easy to break a single piece of sticks, but if the sticks are come together, then it is difficult to break as well. So this is the strategy that can be adopted in community engagement process as well. These are some of the documents that has been developed and that has been ongoing to address this urban resilience work. And at the end, there is another document, a National Disaster Resilient Framework. That document preparation is ongoing, and fortunately, I have also been in the team that is in the development process of that National Disaster Resilient Framework as well. That is under development by NDRRMA of Nepal government. And at the end, I would like to incorporate some learnings from some 2 months back. I was involved in a project that was construction of resilient and transition center for fire affected populations in Raudar district. I would like to incorporate the case study from those projects. In the start of the project, we just met with the community. There was an understanding among the community. We discussed on the needs of the community, and we try to make it legalized, so that we incorporated a minute. Through these minutes, we just incorporated discussions, we incorporated some decisions, and incorporated some of those needs as well that will further assist in the project. Number of orientation programs, discussion programs were held with a different number of stakeholders. This is a popular gathering centers. This is called in local communities. These kinds of buildings are made where lots of community members come together and discuss on the issues as well. A number of discussions were held regarding the construction of buildings. These were held in the open grounds as well, where all the children's and deprived communities, ladies also participated on these orientation programs. We incorporated 2 forms of complaint and feedback mechanism. One was complaint feedback mechanism was instilled in the discussion chamber, where a box was made and people can instill their feedbacks into this box. These feedbacks will be addressed by the committee that was formed during those initial discussions. If there were any complaint or feedbacks that could not be addressed directly through this box, and some might prefer not to provide those information, they might want to create those information secret. So we created a toll-free number, and in the local language as well, we printed a banner, and people just installed it and provide those complaints or feedbacks regarding the projects as well from this information system as well. These are the form of community engagement we did in this project. And along the project as well, it was a fire. fire resistant project. So at the end, there was a fire training works as well. A fire response materials were provided to the communities as well. These are the fire response communities. And our training workshop was provided to them as well to address the fire hazards that was very common in Tarai region of Nepal. And there's a lady that has been practicing during the training session as well. There was a fire and she took out fire during this during this training session. So what are the learnings was we try to what was our process was to inclusive. We are inclusive. We try to incorporate all the stakeholders, marginalized, vulnerable groups in this community engagement process. We are transparent on our objective, plans, and financial transactions. We are always ready to collaborate with the communities and create solutions as well. We empower those communities in decision-making process and problem-solving process. Most of the problems that arise were actually solved by the local communities as well. And in the fifth is the engagement as well. We created a channels of communications and feedback mechanisms as well, so that these people can also be engaged in the wider process. How was this done was we identified the stakeholders during this process. The stakeholders included beneficiaries, local levels, chief district officers from the other districts. We assess the needs of those joint needs, rapid needs assessment were done on the communities. We provide design solutions, so locality-based construction practices as well. The local construction practice was quite different from the construction practice that are done in urban regions as well. So we try to incorporate those local construction practices, and we prepare the designs, drawings, and those design drawings were discussed with the community so that they could accept those design and drawings for the construction of the buildings. And the fourth steps we implemented was implement and monitor. There was construction supervisions from myself, and we conducted a number of training works during those projects. And fifth was we evaluated and adapt some of the problems that issues as well. We adapted challenges. We adapted some of the adjustment were done, and moreover, it was a very good learnings so that it can incorporate it in further future projects as well. When we have to build a resilient center or housing communities at rural areas, some with their own cultural values as well. So it provided us with learnings for the projects as well, and it has also incorporated the importance of community engagement in these types of infrastructure development works as well. So why was this important was us ensure our projects were more responsive to local needs and priorities. I can proudly say that all those housing constructed are now inhabited by those people. They are living under those houses. It has helped us to identify vulnerabilities, assess risk, and develop strategies. All the buildings that were constructed were resilient to earthquake resilient, flood resilient, and fire resilient buildings were constructed. So with the community engagement only, we were able to identify those issues, and we were able to address those issues. And it has also helps us foster the ownership of those buildings, ownership of the project, and it has helps us develop trust and reduce resistance to these kinds of projects. And we are very excited to complete those projects. It was completed within 60 days. We were in a 60 days period. We are able to construct a transition and resilient shelter of all the 22 households that were affected by fire. So this was one of my case studies. This is all the topic. I was actually trying to learn. I was actually planning these slides to be around 25 minutes. So hopefully I have not taken much time with this. This is my slides. Thank you for listening to me. I hope it was useful to many of you as well. This is it. Thank you so much. And lastly, I would like to acknowledge ACECC as well for providing me these opportunities to present my work. It is a very latest work as well. It was completed just 2 to 3 months prior to this presentation as well. And this is the first time I've been presenting the work that was completed as well. I would like to highly I'm highly thankful to ACECC as well, and thankful to Suraj as well for providing me the opportunity to present my work to this large public. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anupji. So it was a very wonderful presentation. You talked in about the framework that you have been like working. And also it was also in the limelight that how you guys worked really hard to develop some transitional centers within just a couple of months, and then people were then shifted to that. So yeah, I really acknowledge your efforts, how you have been working, and especially the thing that you mentioned, because it's not just about the design or the construction that we do, but it's all about how the local communities perceive those, how they take the ownership of those things, and also how do they acknowledge and then get engaged upon that. So yeah, these are some important pillars that you have highlighted upon, and thank you for sharing your experiences. And maybe we have some interesting questions during our Q&A sessions as well. So thank you for your presentation. Now it's time for the second presentation. So I would like to request Ms. Leisa Prowse to get ready for our second presentation. So Leisa is the director of Prowse Consulting. It was established in 2013, and it helps the consulting helps organizations deliver infrastructure and planning projects and explore complex and sensitive challenges with their community and stakeholders. So with more than 30 years of experiences in community and stakeholder engagement and almost 300 projects under her belt, Leisa understands complex and contentious projects in the transport, resources, energy, water, education, health, property, and government sectors. So the combination of skills enables her to meaningfully engage with the range of stakeholders. So without any further much delay, let's hear from Leisa. Over to you, Leisa. So you are muted.
I am muted. I'll just share my screen. Okay, here we go. I hope. All right. Has that worked? Yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which where I'm sitting today. So the Turrbal and the Jagera people in Brisbane, so Meanjin. So I acknowledge those traditional owners and pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you for the introduction. I hope he doesn't read that all. It's very long. I think, well, I'm hoping that that was a really great presentation that we've just had. And I'm hoping to build on that. And in some ways, I'm hoping that, I guess I'm bringing to this, this conversation really very mindful that I'm bringing an Australian practitioner's perspective, and that some of the issues we're dealing with in Australia may be different to the issues that are being dealt with across your member economies. So really just talking about, I suppose, the practice the work I do as an engagement practitioner. So I will just hopefully, yes, okay, great. So the first thing I wanted to do was really just talk about, I suppose, over the 30 years I've been working on engagement, I have heard it defined as a lot of different things. So I just wanted to really quickly just establish, and I think that's kind of happened in the previous presentation, but I'll talk about this from my perspective. So for the past 30 years, I have heard and seen engagement called many things. Some people call it consultation, participation, involvement, outreach. It just depends which part of the world you live in. People also talk about, or projects have also talked about, communities, stakeholders, public, audiences, those kinds of things. And they use those words really interchangeably, and it all gets a bit confusing. So I just wanted to talk briefly about a definition that resonates for me. I am a member of the International Association for Public Participation. I'm actually a fellow of the organisation in Australasia, and this is IAP2 Australasia's definition of engagement. So there's some things that I just want to point out in this definition, and it was really interesting in the previous presentation because I think a lot of the things that were being talked about are the things that are important in this definition. So from the perspective of IAP2, engagement is a really intentional process. You don't engage by accident, you purposely set out to engage with the community. There's also that idea that you are working across. So you are working across organisations, you're working with a range of stakeholders and also communities. And this definition also scoops up that idea of actually getting people or enabling people to shape the decisions, the actions, or the outcomes. So you're not just setting out with an intention, you're also setting out with an intention to catch input that's actually going to shape something. And that something could relate to a problem, an opportunity, or an outcome. Now, the other thing that IAP2 internationally has is 7 core values that underpin best practice engagement. And those core values really relate to a belief that people who are affected by a decision have a right to be involved in the decision-making process, that there's a promise that the community's contribution will actually influence the decision, that we're promoting sustainable decisions by recognising and communicating the needs and interests of all participants, including decision makers. And we're seeking out and facilitating the involvement of people who are potentially affected. So it's, and input into how people would like to participate, information being provided in a way that's meaningful or enables meaningful participation, and communicating how people's input has actually influenced a decision. So kind of in a nutshell for me, that means if we're doing engagement well, we're recognising that the people who are affected have a right to be involved, and we're finding them, we're engaging with them in ways that work for them. We're making sure that their contribution will make a difference to the outcome. And then at the end, we're closing out the engagement. So we're actually letting people know that a decision was made and how their contribution influenced that decision. So it's kind of, for me, that's what best practice is. Now, I suppose, what does that mean for infrastructure projects and resilient infrastructure? So best practice engagement will always lead to better decisions and stronger project outcomes. And I think we've just heard a fantastic example of where that actually was happening. It's also about building stronger organisations and between organisations and the community and their stakeholders. It's actually helping project teams to better understand and manage issues. So by talking to people, you understand what's important to them so that you can actually go about figuring out how to manage that. Also helping a project team to be better informed about a local situation and local issues. I often say, to people working on projects that you actually don't live there, or you might live there, but if you don't live there, you really need to listen to the people who do. And also, I think best practice engagement will always help people or a community to be better informed about how infrastructure in their city, their town, or their region actually works. I'm often not amazed, but surprised. I'm often surprised at how little people actually understand about how a place works. And I think it's part of our job to help them learn more about how our cities and our towns and our regions actually function. So if you're really doing engagement well, you're going to have generated interest in your project or the problem you're trying to solve. You've provided opportunities for all of the voices to be heard. You've listened and you've found opportunities to collaborate. You've gone beyond legislated obligations. So in Australia, we have sometimes statutory obligations to inform or involve communities in particular ways. I think really good best practice engagement will actually go beyond that ticking of a box. You've engaged with the community early or even first to help you define the problem. And you've delivered a process that was iterative and engaged with the community at every phase. So preliminary planning, impact assessment, design, detailed design, construction, operation, you are engaging with the community as often as you can, or, you know, at those key points when they can really help you inform a decision. And you've actually brought the community and your stakeholders on the journey of your project. And if you really, really deliver best practice engagement, and I think this was referred to in the earlier presentation as well, people are going to feel like they own the outcome because they were part of creating it. So what does that look like in Australia? So IAP2 internationally and also in Australia has annual awards for excellence. And for the last 4 years, I have been one of those judges in Australia for the Core Values Awards. And when it comes to engagement excellence in Australia, particularly in relation to planning and delivering infrastructure projects and resilient, you know, communities responding to disasters, this is what I'm observing about the kinds of submissions we're seeing. Successful projects have really taken the time to work with people to understand what's going on for them and what their concerns are. They're also trying to find opportunities to collaborate, and sometimes in really unlikely ways and places. So we've seen a lot of submissions over the last 4 years of big infrastructure projects that have actually found ways to work with the community, and in some cases empower the community to choose how a piece of leftover land might be used best to, you know, to provide something for that community. So they're finding really great ways to collaborate and actually build good community facilities and get communities working together. They're also focusing on diversity and inclusion, so really working hard to make sure all of the voices are heard, and they're really purposeful about what they're doing and engaging early and respectfully and as many times as it takes to actually resolve some problems. And what's really important, I think, too, is that over the last few years, some of our award winners haven't necessarily been multi-million-dollar projects. They've been projects that have really looked at how they could extract impact or have a really great outcome in a community through really maximising the spend, I suppose, in terms of what they've spent on engagement and what the community has gained from that. So just to close, I just wanted to really quickly talk about some of my observations, what I've noticed over the past 30 years working on a range of projects across Australia. I hear a lot of people talk about how communities are changing, and I'm not actually convinced that that's the case. I think that community members and people, because they are people, are just as passionate now as they always have been. You know, I haven't seen any change in that passion over 30 years. But what they do have are different tools to communicate with you or to vent their frustrations. So, you know, and they've got social media, they've got access to a whole lot of ways to actually get your attention. I also think the internet has given people access to a lot of information really, really quickly. Not all of that information is correct, and sometimes people don't have a way of knowing what is correct or not. I do think our problems are becoming more wicked and complex. So I was part of something recently where someone was talking about the intersection of those complex problems. So you might have like biodiversity, protecting biodiversity is quite a complex thing and critical to where we're headed as a planet. You also have climate change, climate impacts, supply of materials. In Australia, we're talking a lot about the housing crisis, which is a really complex problem and quite difficult to solve. So, and I think the other observation I wanted to share with you is that's what the graphics are about. I think a lot of people talk about how they are seeing global perspectives. People are more focused on global perspectives, and I think I'm seeing on a lot of projects that people are still really focused on their local needs or their personal needs. So for example, talking to people about, how you might protect a coastline, they will be very interested in the solutions unless the solution involves growing mangroves in front of their house and they lose their ocean view. And then it becomes very much about them and the personal impact on them rather than the global impact. Where I see that being a bit different is the younger generation. So we've done some work where we've actually done some engagement processes with school students, and their capacity to leap to the future and think about what is needed to create the kind of world that they want to live in. They are just so fast at it and and have a really global way of looking at the world. Like, we have to protect the environment. We have to do things about climate change. So they seem very switched on from that perspective. And just finally, I think the thing that's missing in Australia sometimes is some of that education around, like I mentioned before, understanding how places work. And I think the more people understand how place works, the more able they will be to participate in actually solving some of those wicked problems that we're confronting, and some of the reason why we really do need to look at resilient infrastructure. And that's me. I'm done. So I think there's a couple of things in chat. I don't know if they're questions, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Leisa, for this wonderful presentation. So today we've got some...
Yeah, I'm going to try and stop sharing my screen.
Okay, maybe I can help you on this.
Oh, I've got it.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah. So thank you, Leisa, for this wonderful presentation. So we've got insights from Nepal and especially from Australia, how the importance of the community engagement is there for developing any kind of resilient infrastructure. So this is a very important topic, and really, I was asked by the award that was paraphrased as "all voices heard." I think this is what we need to ensure that before we develop any resilient infrastructure, we need to hear the voices of the people, and also we need to comply with what the standard is and how this should go in parallel. So thank you for this wonderful insight. We have already got some couple of questions in the chat, and we also I would also like to request the participants from our social media and also from our Zoom to raise your hands if you have any further queries. Firstly, I would like to take question from Faiza. Faiza, would you like to spell it out, or shall I do that?
My question is for Leisa, but if Anup would also like to give any input, it's okay. My question is, as in one of the slides, Leisa has explained us that the best practices for community engagement is to make sure that all of the stakeholders get their voices heard. How do you make sure that all of the voices are heard and you reach to a consensus? Because most of the time there are different stakeholders, they are coming with different, they have their own different stakes and benefits, which might be conflicting, and they might have different opinion and perspective regarding your project. So how do you reach to a consensus, making sure that everybody is satisfied in the end?
Yeah, sure. I think there's two parts to what you just asked, and I'm just jotting it down so I don't forget it. So I think there's two parts to it. The first is, how do you hear all the voices? So I would say you've got to map who your stakeholders are and who the community is, so you understand who all of the voices are, and then find the ways to involve them and the ways that work best for them. So I think Anup's presentation had examples of how they'd done that for particular groups. But the key thing is to actually know who are all of the voices, but also have ways for the voices or the stakeholders that you didn't identify to let you know that they're there. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is about consensus. So it's really important to to make sure that you do need consensus, because sometimes you don't. So I will often talk, I'll have, I'm a private consultant, so I do a lot of work for different clients. And some of them will say, we want people to be happy at the end of this. And I will say to them, they may not be happy. Like the solution you offer at the end may never make them happy, but what you actually want them to do is to accept it, to understand why it was there. So I think consensus sometimes can be really challenging. But if you really do need to get consensus, then there are a range of engagement tools that I think, or methods that you can use to actually build that consensus, but it takes a lot of time. Unless the problem is really pressing and people have a need to get to that consensus fast. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and quickly following up to that, I also got one question from our social media, and also Faiza also focused on this. What could be the stage that you could engage the community, from the planning to the implementation? What would you like to say on this?
What would I like to say? So I was at a conference recently. Sorry, I'm just jumping in. I was at a conference recently. I always say engage early. So as soon as you know what the problem is, sometimes even before you've got a solution, and there's often a lot of debate about, do you, particularly for engineers who are doing linear infrastructure, they prefer to have lines on the ground before they go out and talk to people. But I think sometimes when you engage early and people have an influence on where things are, or defining the problem, it can really help them to understand what the problem is. So yeah, I always say engage early. I was at a conference in August, and one of the keynotes, who I've known for years, she said, engage first. So as practitioners, she was encouraging us to really fight for engaging with the community first. So I think it depends how much you need to bring people on the journey with you.
I'd like to just add to it. Yes, I agree to the fact that we have to engage them early. But in case of some certain scenario when we will not be able to engage them early, planning is done somewhere else. But then we have to focus on two main aspects. First is communication. We need to communicate well with the community. And the second is we need to be open to change. We need to be open to adapt to the needs as well. So if we are not able to communicate with them, we engage with them in planning phase, then we should be open to change, and we should be open to modifications, and we should really communicate with them well. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good to hear about the open to change from the structural engineer by adapting with the needs from the community. So well said, Anup. And we have few more questions. So Salindra sir, would you like to spell it out, or?
Yeah, thank you. The questions on the chat just briefly, and then I'll be quick, I suppose. One is, I know the different aspects of community engagement, any engagement. I mean, I suppose just for other future leaders, any comments from Leisa and Anup also in relation to how important is the listening aspect and the informing aspect of community engagement. I know it's important, but is it very important? Both on mute.
Lisa, you're muted.
I was going to let you go first.
Yes, I think it's extremely important, because we have also faced some of the scenarios in previous projects as well. The main challenge we face without if we didn't listen to them or inform with them is acceptability. You might have heard of some projects as well. They have invested millions of rupees, millions of money, but people have not accepted to the change because it didn't align with their cultural values. It didn't align with their socioeconomic perspectives. One for example can be in some communities people can live nearby to their cattle, but if someone else builds some shelter and the cattle live far away from them, and it provides them with difficulties. So I think it's extremely important to listen to them, to inform them, and to adapt with their needs as well. I would just like to say that.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to engaging with people, I think listening is the most important skill you can have. I talk a lot about listening with empathy. So actually listening to people with your heart as well as your head to try and understand their perspectives. And I think that scoops all of those things in about cultural differences. And like if you're really listening to people, you start to understand where they're coming from. I also talk about having an attitude of curiosity. So being really curious about why people are saying the things they're saying, really seeking to understand them. So that's what I bring to the engagement I do. But I think too, that information that you share with people needs to be really clear, because we've really got to help people to get involved in the projects they need to get involved in.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Yeah, and I especially love the question from Surendra sir. It was like, how do you inverted nicely engage and involve the politicians? That was also a very crucial one.
You know, there's three little ones. The second one's to do with funding, especially after disasters. Leisa, I mean, obviously, you know, in Queensland we have the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, I think, and then nationally we have sort of government bodies. But yeah, just any comments about funding for community engagement in projects, especially after natural disasters, and then we can talk about politicians. Anup,
you are expecting me, okay.
Yeah, I thought I'd unmuted, sorry. And do you want to go first?
I think you can answer it well.
Yeah, well, no, I don't know that I can. The question about funding is really interesting. And I think sometimes projects that really need funding don't get it. And sometimes it takes that disaster for the funding to arrive. In terms of some of the projects that I've seen where we are trying to proactively manage natural disasters, some of the things that are really effective in terms of engaging with people are actually not that expensive. So it's about having a barbecue in the park and getting people in local areas to come. And sorry, that's a very reference, but getting people to come and have a chat about what's, you know, trying to understand those really personal perspectives as well. So I think that example that I gave about mangroves, like you hear that all the time, where that could be the thing that holds a beach together, but people don't want their view to change. And the funding required to help change that perception can sometimes be as simple as a cup of tea in that person's house to just have the conversation with them about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the last one was a curly one. I suppose, how do you nicely, in inverted commas, engage and involve politicians in community engagement?
I'd like to answer that.
Yeah.
It's quite tricky and it's quite challenging as well. Firstly, some of those points we normally consider is firstly, empower the community. I think communication with them is extremely essential. The communication regarding how it will process, what are the outcomes, what are the role, what will be the challenges that can arise. I think it's very important. We have to make sure that some external third party influence doesn't shake or doesn't influence the process we have been planning along with it. There are some engagements process that are practicing in Nepal as well. It's called it's Sarvodaliya Baithak is called in Nepal language. It is like meetings gathering that are done with by calling all the political leaders of all the communities, all the political parties. They come together and we provide orientation to them. We describe the process. We are transparent with the finance associated with the project. That's one of the measures. And the second one, and the most important one, is engagement with local levels, because local levels, municipalities, rural municipalities, these are extremely powerful in Nepal. They are powerful by laws. There are lots of rights given to them. There are lots of duties given to them, and even with there are political influence, they have those right indebted with them so that they can overcome and they can facilitate with those as well. And more importantly, all those elected leaders are representative of political parties as well. So with that as well, if it is extremely important to work with local levels first and foremost, and there are some other methods as well that we engage with political parties and involve them in our project. Thank you. I think I have hopefully answered your question.
Any comments, Leisa?
Any comments?
Any comments that aren't career limiting? I think it depends where you are in the world, what the political nuance is in your country. In Australia, we have federal government, state government, local government. I think on projects, it depends who's paying for it. So if it's federally funded, then the federal politicians are going to be more interested, like the local federal representatives. I think the kind of approach from the perspective of the projects I've worked on, it's often somebody else in the engagement team. Like, it will usually not be my team that's dealing with, or me that's dealing with the politicians. It will be someone within the organisation that is. But it's about making sure, I think the best way is to make sure they know what their constituents are talking about, because those are the people who vote for them. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, that was nice. Suraj, before you go to Faiza's question, I think I saw a hand raised by, I'm trying to remember the colleague, maybe someone had his hand up. I don't know, I can't remember.
Future young to be engineer. So we have one future upcoming engineer. So over to you, Somnath. Maybe you could also have your short introduction. Yeah, very short. Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm undergraduate student from Poudel campus, Tribhuvan University, and I have a question for Leisa. Participation and engagement are two different aspects, and having participation without much engagement really doesn't contribute. So how do you think we have sound community engagement with technical aspect from civil engineering? Could you please enlighten it with your own experience?
So I just want to make sure I've understood. So you're saying that how do people participate when the questions are technical? Is that what you mean? Like it's very engineering related?
In similar manner, so how do you explain the people of project going on?
Oh, so how do you explain those technical things?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm an advocate for, well, in Australia, plain English, so plain language. So really helping technical people to explain what they do as simply as possible. So I think that's the first and most important piece. I also mentioned during my presentation that one of the things that surprises me sometimes is how people don't really understand how something works. So they turn on a tap, but don't ever really think about where does the water come from? How do we catch it? How does it get from there to here? And how is it drinkable? Like that's that's an Australian example. How does the road happen? I think the more we can help engineers or scientists communicate what they do so that people can actually understand some of those processes, not the nuances, not the technical aspects, but just how important it is, the better projects will be. I'm not sure if that's answered your question, but I think aim to describe it simply would be the best bet. And people will surprise you constantly at how quickly they get what it is. Like once you take the time, they'll go, okay, that's how you design a bridge. That's why this aspect of house design is really important, because when it floods, it means I can move straight back in. So when people start to get it, they'll start to change their perspectives and start to understand what you do more. I hope that covers it.
Exactly. So
Thank
the
you.
simplicity is the main thing, and how easily we describe it to the locals or communities, those technical parts, it's really important. And that what matters because it is a very significant step during the project implementation. And nicely highlighted. So thank you so much. We have so many questions, but I guess we are also about to be over. The time is also about to get over. So maybe I'll take one last question before we end. So I think it's from Maria. So Maria, do you want to speak out or?
Hello. Okay, I will read my question. Indeed, community engagement is very important, especially when we conduct this prior to project implementation. I just wonder how we can do such effectively and efficiently if there are time constraints due to various proposed projects that need consultation.
When you say time constraints, do you mean that you have to make the project happen quickly?
We need to immediately prepare for the plans and program of works of those projects. So as much as possible, we need to incorporate the stakeholders' concern prior to programming, but because of time constraints, we cannot do that.
I think the most important thing is to be really honest with people. So it's that, you know, how I was talking about the intention. And I think part of the intention and the purpose is to go, right, we've only got this much time and we can only talk to this many people. So we need to get the most out of the time we have. And I think if you were really honest with people about that and why you have time constraints, then they will probably be flexible in return. I don't know if you've got some examples, Anup.
I just like to add that we have just mentioned about time constraint. I think community engagement should be the part of those planning processes. I think have to. It's the facet of a project that we cannot ignore, obviously, because this need to be accepted by people. So this community engagement process should be the part of proposed project, and specific time should be allotted for this process as well. I'd just like to add to that.
Thank you, Anup. So yeah, as Lisa highlighted, the honesty and the work we do should be whatever the work we plan or we do, it should be solely for the interest of the community people and so on. So before we end, okay, Dipesh, just give a maybe this will be the last question for today. Okay, Dipesh, over to you fast.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to ask the question that during community engagement, how would we ensure that minority voices are also heard? Because while making decision in every project, there will be a majority community and there will be a minority who are dissatisfied. That could lead problems in down the road. So how do we ensure their voices are heard?
And maybe may I add something onto this? What happens is during the community consultations or something like that, only the ones who have good access to communication or who gets information, generally they seem to participate. Whereas, as Dipesh said, the marginalized group or maybe the someone with minorities are often ignored or often they don't participate in such meetings. So what would be the best way to engage every stakeholder so that no one is left behind? Am I right, Dipesh? This is what you were referring to?
Yes, I was trying to say this.
To our presenters.
Yeah, that's extremely interesting, and it's important as well in current need as well. I would just like to present some of the things that we actually implemented. Firstly, different level of communication were done. We tried to have one main committee, but we're able to discuss with those minority groups as well. We're able to communicate with those as well. And one of those issues that we can face is they are unwilling to communicate with us directly because of leak of information or understanding of the information as well. So I also presented in my presentation as well. We implemented two mechanisms. One was a complaint and feedback box, where you can put in your complaints or feedbacks anonymously, and no one will know. They can just address those issues. They can write up in any form of paper. They can put it in those box, and during meetings or during some committee works, we address those issues. And second one was we created a toll-free number where people can easily call the center and they can record their information as well. And we tried our best to promote those toll-free numbers. We created banners, we created some papers, posters, and we printed those, pasted those posters to numerous locations within the project, so that those people, if they are not able to directly communicate to us as well, they can communicate and record their feedbacks and complaints through those toll-free numbers in those centers. And the project team will be monitoring those calls as well, and they will try to address those issues anonymously as well, without displaying, without revealing their identities. Those issues were addressed. Let's see.
Any comments from Leisa?
Yeah, I think it kind of ties to something I said earlier about making sure that you understand who you need to talk to. So really understanding who some of those more marginalized groups or who some of those minority groups are, and reaching out to someone who can help you to understand the best way to actually communicate with them, but really exploring as much of that as you can, so that you have a really good handle on who you need to talk to or who you need to involve.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leisa and Anup, and we're really thankful to our participants who stood to the last minute and also expressed their very interesting thoughts. And there are a few more questions, but due to some time limitations, I think we might have to now limit those. So maybe we can address your comments. We can write to you from our speakers. So on that note, we will do that. So I would like to once again thank our resource persons, Leisa and Anup, for sharing your valuable experiences. And since this webinar is being attended by the participants from 17 different countries, so the time zone and other, there are so many barriers, but despite they are trying to do that. So we have also recorded these sessions, and for those who are willing to check out, we will be publishing it in our YouTube channel. So with this, I think we are now about to end our technical webinar on this community engagement for resilient infrastructure. So once again, I would like to thank you all, and special thanks to our Salendra and Makbul sir. So before ending our today's webinar, maybe if we can have a group photo, or do you have anything, Salendra sir?
Mm-hmm.
Raised hand.
No. I was just saying bye to Leisa and Anup and everyone.
So maybe let's have one group photo and then we'll end it. Okay. So if it's possible for our participants to have the photos, and sorry for the online participants in our social media, we can do this right now. Okay. Okay, so I take the picture. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, Sumanji. Chen, are you there? Okay, maybe it's. And sorry, Makbul sir, it's already more than a midnight. So sorry for reading your Friday. And
No
with this, so with this, I would like to thank you once again, and let's hoping to see you soon. So we'll be having another more interesting topic on our upcoming webinar. So thank you so much. Namaste. And bye-bye.
Thank you, our dear speakers.
Thank you to all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.